if you live on a boat, you're going to have the occasional problem. Even if you don't live on a boat, you're going to have the occasional problem. But I want to just talk about the problems, the difficulties that I've had that are directly really about boating. Although the first one kind of isn't. The first problem I had was I bought the boat in January, and in February we had this thing called COVID, and it just pulled the rug right out from me, because I had all these plans and I couldn't do any of them because we weren't allowed to move the boat. Just me being on a boat by myself, I wasn't allowed to go up and down the River Thames because I might be spreading COVID. Anyway, so I got stuck there, but eventually they lifted it and I was able to move down the river. But it took quite a while, and you know, but such is life. The next problem I had was the Hammersmith bridge is very old, and some engineers looked at it and they thought it was too dangerous for anyone to go across it because it could fall down, and if it could fall down, then close the traffic underneath it as well, which doesn't actually make any sense, because if you've closed the traffic over the bridge, the traffic under the bridge is going to be safer. Whatever. That took about 3 weeks of negotiating with the Hammersmith Council before they gave me permission. And I kind of just didn't give them any option. I'm like, this is the best day for me to go under, sometime around midday. And they were like, oh, okay. So I had to have written permission, and I had to call the police on the radio and everything. But I went under the bridge, everything was safe. Nothing's ever fallen off the frickin' bridge, and no one wants to fix it because there's two sides to a bridge and neither side want to pay for it. After I'd spent some time in Chatham and Swale, I ended up in Ramsgate, and it was time for me to go across the channel. And I had someone planned to come with me, Ben, who'd help me come down the river, and he'd help me go out to the Red Fort. Super nice guy. But his girlfriend was about to give birth, and he's like, dude, I can't come with you. Except he said it in a very posh English voice. Dude, I can't come with you, because his girlfriend was about to have a baby. And so he's like, it's all you. And I'm like, no. He goes, you can do it. We've talked about everything, we've gone through it, we've been out in the boat 2 or 3 times, 4 times, I don't know. And he's like, you're totally capable of doing it, so just go for it. And he gave me a couple of tips of advice and stuff, and I'm like, all right, here we go. So I went across the English Channel, which is one of the busiest seaways in the entire world, and had no problems. Everything was successful, and I got to Calais on time. It was a good day. It felt like a real, like, I did it. No real problems getting into France, that was fine, but about maybe 40 something kilometers into France, I came across a really big closed lock, and I called them on the radio, nothing, tied up, and waited till the next day, and still nothing. And I just sat there and I couldn't find out anything. I was thinking about going around it, but it was quite long, and it didn't seem like a good idea. So I got stuck there, and eventually I saw someone, like 2 days after I first got there, I saw someone in the window. So I ran up and said, you know, when's the lock écluse? Open. Open. And he's like, fermé. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and he gave me a date. And I'm like, okay, because you can't like argue with them. They were doing some repairs on the lock gate, and they replaced the big lock gates, the main gates. And they finished a few days early, and on I went. Amanda had to leave me because she didn't want to sit on the boat for 2 weeks, so that was fair. The next issue was another, because by now it's getting into the end of the season, and they closed down the canal just south of Montargis. They were doing some bridge work, and that did take 2 months to get the bridge fixed. Again, it was done on time, and the nice people from the V&F came by. A lady came by and she said, you're welcome to use the power and the water for free, no problem, stay as long as you need to. And then they came by a bit later and let me know when the gates were going to open, the bridge was going to be repaired. And so that was good, and I got to know France a little bit. It's really nice there. It's a nice little town. One of the problems you have on a boat is it's difficult to get stuff delivered to you because you're always moving. So I use a thing called boat mail, where everything goes to one place, and then a nice lady called Joanna opens the letter and scans it and emails it to you. So that worked out very well. She does a really good job, and it's not that expensive for the amount of work she has to do. It also gives you an address to have on your driving license and insurance and any documentation, and it's completely legal, it's all above board, and she's great. But one of the things she had to send me was some stupid paperwork from a court who'd been sending stuff constantly to my mother's address, and I hadn't got it. So the fine went up and up and up, and ended up being over £1,000 before they eventually emailed me. Smart people. And I did get it all dealt with, and I did a court appearance by video, and we got everything reduced to the original thing. But it was such a pain in the ass dealing with these people, but I managed. Sorry about all the noise. There's a line just slapping up there, and there's nothing much I can do about it. I had some problems with the internet, trying to get connected by internet to the world. I couldn't figure it out, and eventually when I got to Paris I ordered a Starlink, which actually worked great, but I should have tried harder to solve the problem without getting Starlink, because Starlink ended up being quite expensive. And now, well, when I got to the south of France, I was using a French company called Free, and they were about less than 30 euros a month for unlimited data, and that worked out really well. I recommend them. I wish someone had told me about them beforehand. I asked everybody and no one knew, and it was like, going through France was not a problem. The V&F people were amazing. I did have one slight problem with a crew member, not Amanda, not Beanie. I'm not going to tell you her name, but she was drinking too much. That's all there was to it. And I don't think anyone had ever called her on it, but I did. And so the first time it happened, the next day I'm like, you can't do that. You can't be drunk on a boat, because if you fall in, you could just die, and that would be really bad. And then a couple of weeks after that it happened again, and the next day I said, if you do that once more, I'm going to ask you to leave the boat, because I don't feel safe having you on the boat if you're not capable of drinking sensibly. And shortly after that she left the boat. Friendly, we left on good terms, but I have not spoken to her since, which saddens me because I'd been friends with her for 35 years. But what are you going to do, you know? It's not like I'm strict about not drinking. I don't mind, you can have a drink. But when you're almost falling in the water twice because you're not capable of climbing onto the boat and off the boat, then I have a problem. So we solved that problem. It's beginning to rain a little bit, sorry. I have run the boat aground a couple of times. Nothing serious, but definitely aground. So the worst one was in Vivier in France, where there was like a green and red, and you're supposed to go between the green and the red, and I left and I went aground. But the water level went down just after even though we're on the river, the water level went down because the hydroelectric power station opened its sluices or closed its sluices, and therefore the drop. I had to wait about 9 hours before I could get off, but There was no damage, and we all successfully lived. One funny thing is the lady who ran the marina, she calls me on the phone at one point and she says, Steve, can you come out and wave to me? And so I waved to her. She's on the shore about, I don't know, 50 meters away. And I said, hi. And she goes, yeah, the lady next to me, she's the mayor. She says hello. So the only other problem I can think of is when I wasn't paying attention to my refrigeration technique and I managed to eat some salmon. I had 2 packs of salmon. One was old, one was new. They looked the same. I ate the old one by mistake and got food poisoning in Italy. And at the same time I got food poisoning, because that's just because you know there is a God and she doesn't like you. At the same time, I was tucked into this little bay and then the wind changed and I had the worst storm hitting the front of the boat so badly that I didn't feel safe coming up to the front of the boat to raise the anchor and move. And also, if I had moved, I had nowhere to go. Fortunately, the anchor held beautifully, and in the morning, at about, as soon as the light came up, the sun came up, I was out of there, and I took a nap. But that was the worst night I've had on the boat, because just the bouncing around and the throwing up, and I couldn't sleep, I couldn't go down, I couldn't stay, it was just horrible. Other than that, everything else has been peachy. And honestly, since I've been in Malta, I haven't had any problems at all. It's just been great. So that's my little travelogue of problems. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.